I found out my mom was planning to evict me and my younger brother on the very same day. She sat us down for what we thought was a celebratory family dinner, and honestly, I still can't breathe when I think about the look of pure indifference on her face as she handed us the typed-up notices. Imagine coming home after working a double shift to support a household you don't even own, thinking you're finally catching a break, only to be told that your presence is now a burden on her lifestyle, and you have 72 hours to clear out your life. I'm standing there, looking at my 16-year-old brother who is sobbing because he has nowhere to go, while my mother is calmly sipping wine and checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. Was I wrong for the way I decided to burn her world down after that? Or would you have done the exact same thing if the person who gave you life decided to treat you like a stray dog? I need you to listen to how this started because it wasn't always this way. Or maybe I was just too blind to see the monster hiding behind the Mother of the Year mask she wore in public. My name is Alex, and for the last 3 years, I've been the glue holding our fractured home together. My dad passed away unexpectedly when I was 20, leaving my mom, Sarah, and my little brother, Leo, in a complete state of shock. Dad was the provider, the rock, and the one who handled every single bill. When he died, Mom fell apart, or at least that's what I told myself at the time. I dropped out of my dream university, moved back into our childhood home, and took 2 jobs. One at a warehouse and one at a local diner, just to make sure the mortgage was paid and Leo stayed in his private school. Mom didn't work. She said her grief was too heavy, that her heart couldn't handle the stress of a workplace, so I stepped up. I paid for the groceries, the utilities, the car insurance, and even her expensive skincare routines, because I wanted her to feel normal again. Leo was struggling too, but he's a good kid. He did the chores, kept his grades up, and never asked for a dime, knowing how hard I was grinding. I remember nights where I would come home with my feet bleeding from standing all day, only to find my mother upset because I hadn't picked up her favorite specific brand of organic wine on my way back. I brushed it off as grief, telling myself she was just hurting, but the reality was that she was becoming addicted to a lifestyle she wasn't paying for. I would spend my weekends repairing the fence, painting the kitchen, and keeping the garden pristine, so she wouldn't feel the heaviness of a neglected home. I sacrificed my social life, my education, and my youth to be the man of the house, thinking I was honoring my father's legacy. Little did I know, while I was scrubbing floors and checking oil levels in the car, my mother was plotting a new life that didn't include us. About 6 months ago, things started to shift. Mom started going out more, buying designer clothes with money she saved, which I found out later was actually a secret life insurance policy Dad had that she never told us about. She started seeing this guy named Marcus, a lifestyle coach, who was 10 years younger than her, and looked like he spent more time at the tanning salon than at a job. Marcus was the catalyst for the end. He started staying over every night, eating the food I bought, using the internet I paid for, and looking at me and Leo like we were stains on the carpet of his new mansion. He would walk around the house in his silk robes, critiquing the way I folded the laundry or the fact that Leo's backpack was cluttering the energy of the entryway. I tried to talk to Mom about it, but she would just giggle like a schoolgirl and say that I was being low vibration. She started talking about manifesting a life of luxury and how certain people were anchors holding her back from her true potential. I didn't realize at the time that she was talking about her own children. One evening, I came home and found all of Dad's old woodworking tools, the ones he promised to pass down to us, piled up on the curb. Marcus had convinced Mom that old energy was blocking her abundance, so she was literally throwing our father's memory in the trash. I lost it that night, screaming at her about respect, but she just looked at me with this cold, detached stare and said that it was her house and her life. I spent hours that night dragging those heavy tools into my car, crying because it felt like Dad was being dyed all over again. I had to store them in a friend's garage because Marcus said they were eyesores. Every day after that, the atmosphere in the house became more toxic. Marcus started telling Leo that he should look into alternative living, instead of college, trying to plant the seed that we didn't belong there. The weeks leading up to the big dinner were eerie. She was being uncharacteristically nice, asking about my savings, and when Leo's school term ended, I thought she was finally coming back to us, finally realizing that we were a team. I even bought her a bouquet of flowers that Tuesday, thinking we were turning a corner. Then came that Friday night. She cooked, which she never does, and told us she had a big announcement about our future. Leo and I sat there, actually smiling, thinking maybe she was going to apologize or tell us Marcus was leaving. Instead, as soon as the plates were cleared, she reached into her bag and slid 2 envelopes across the table. One for me, and one for a literal child. She told us Marcus was moving in permanently, they were turning Leo's room into a home gym, and my room was going to be an influencer studio for her new brand. She said we were stagnating her growth, and that as an empowered woman, she needed to shed the weights of her past. I asked her where she expected a 16-year-old to go, and she just shrugged and said his father's sister lived 3 states away, and we could figure it out. The betrayal was a physical pain in my chest. I looked at the woman who tucked me in for 20 years, and realized she was a stranger. She didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. She just started scrolling on her phone, showing Marcus the new lighting fixtures she wanted for the studio she was stealing from her own son. She talked about us like we were tenants who had overstayed a lease, rather than the family who had supported her through her darkest hours. So there I was, staring at a legal eviction notice signed by my own mother while Marcus sat in the living room laughing at a sitcom. I realized then that I had a choice to make. I could leave quietly and let her ruin us, or I could show her exactly what happens when you push a provider too far. I sat in my room that night, listening to them laugh in the kitchen, and I started making a list. Not a list of things to pack, but a list of every single thing in that house that wouldn't exist without my sweat and my paycheck. Before I tell you the absolute carnage I unleashed on her and Marcus over the next 72 hours, I want you to stop and think about this. If your parent gave you 3 days to find a home for you and your minor sibling while they moved in a random boyfriend, what would you do? Would you walk away, or would you fight back? Drop a comment right now and tell me if I was justified in what comes next, because I know some people think I went too far. I didn't just leave. I spent the first 24 hours in a cold, calculated rage. I called my boss at the warehouse, who happens to be an old friend of my dad, and told him everything. He was disgusted and offered me his guest house for as long as I needed. But I wasn't done. I realized that while the house was in Mom's name, every single utility, the high-speed fiber internet, the security system, and even the lease on the luxury SUV she was driving were in my name because her credit had been trashed after the funeral. I hadn't just been paying the bills. I was the legal account holder for her entire existence. Monday morning, the day before her deadline for us, I went to work. Not at my jobs, but on her life. I canceled the electricity, the water, and the gas, effective Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. I called the car dealership and informed them that I would no longer be making payments on the SUV, and told them exactly where they could come to repossess it. Then I called the internet provider and had the service disconnected. Since Marcus worked as a crypto trader and influencer, I knew this would cripple him. But the real kicker was the furniture. See, almost every piece of furniture in that house, the velvet sofa Marcus loved, the 75-inch TV, the dining table we were sitting at, was bought on a payment plan under my name over the last 2 years. I called the rental company and the furniture store, and told them I was moving and needed them to pick up the items immediately. I scheduled the pickup for Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. I also contacted the private school Leo attended. I had been paying the tuition out of pocket. I informed them that Leo would be transferring and requested a full refund for the remaining semester, which they granted since I was the sole payer on record. That money went straight into a new savings account for Leo's future. I didn't stop there. I remembered that the premium subscriptions they used, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, even Marcus's premium gym membership, were all linked to my credit card. I canceled them all. I even went as far as to contact the lawn care service and the pool cleaner, telling them the contract was terminated. I wanted her to feel the weight of every single convenience I had provided. That night, I quietly packed Leo's things and my own while Mom and Marcus were out at a club, celebrating their new freedom. We moved everything into a storage unit, and then went to my boss's house. On Tuesday morning, I sat in my car down the street and watched. At 7 a.m., the big moving trucks pulled up. I watched from a distance as the movers entered with their master keys, since I had authorized the return of goods, and began stripping the house bare. I saw Marcus run out in his bathrobe, screaming and waving his arms as they carried out the TV and the couch. He actually tried to sit on the sofa to prevent them from taking it, but they showed him the legal paperwork with my signature. Then the repo man arrived for the SUV. Mom came running out, crying, trying to show them her ID, but they didn't care. The contract was in my name, and the owner had surrendered the vehicle. At 8 a.m. sharp, the lights went out. No water, no heat, no internet. The house was a hollow, dark shell. She tried to call me, but I had blocked her. She tried to call Leo, but I had changed his number already. I heard later from a neighbor that Marcus left her that same afternoon because he couldn't live in a construction zone, and he didn't want to be associated with her drama. He literally packed his one suitcase and called an Uber, leaving her standing in an empty, dark house with nothing but the clothes on her back. The most satisfying part was knowing she had nothing left to post on her social media. No luxury car, no designer living room, and no perfect life. She had traded her children for a fantasy, and I made sure the fantasy vanished along with us. She tried to reach out to my dad's family, but I had already sent them a copy of the eviction notices she gave us, along with photos of Dad's tools in the trash. They were so horrified that they collectively blocked her and offered to help Leo with his college fund. She ended up having to sell the house because she couldn't afford the taxes or the mortgage without my income. And since it was in such a state of neglect and now completely empty, she got pennies on the dollar. She's now living in a tiny studio apartment on the bad side of town, working a retail job she hates, while Leo is thriving in a new school, and I've been promoted to a manager position at the warehouse. He's happy, healthy, and finally away from the toxic influence of a mother who didn't deserve him. She sent me a letter last week through a relative, begging for forgiveness and asking for money, saying that family should stick together, and that she was under a spell by Marcus. She claimed she was having a mental breakdown, and that I should have known she didn't mean it. But I know better. She meant every word when she thought she was winning. I haven't replied and I never will. I think the silence is the best answer I can give to someone who tried to make her children homeless for a man she barely knew. I spent 3 years being her safety net while she waited for the first opportunity to cut me loose. Looking back, I realized that being family is a privilege, not a right, and if you treat your children like garbage, you don't get to act surprised when the trash gets taken out. I lost a mother, but I saved my brother and myself from a lifetime of being used and manipulated. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, seeing her world crumble, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat to protect Leo's future. The lesson I learned is that blood might be thicker than water, but it's not thicker than a legal contract or basic human decency. You can't treat people like disposable tools and expect them to build you a palace. If you think I did the right thing by stripping everything away from her, hit that like button right now. It helps me know I'm not crazy for standing my ground. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more stories about people finally getting the karma they deserve. And please head to the comments and tell me, would you ever forgive a parent who did this, or is the bridge burned forever? I'll be reading your responses and seeing you all in the next story.